How excited are you about the return of baseball?
I got to tell you, not only am I really excited as a baseball fan, or as a Yankees fan, because on paper they have one of the best teams I've ever seen going into this season. Tim, I mean that. I think on paper they look like, but funky things can happen in a shortened season, right? But even as a Yankees fan who realizes this could kind of undermine a juggernaut team, I'm really interested to see a 60-game season. I think baseball has had look, for kids who don't know, there was a time not all that many decades ago where baseball was the #1 sport in the country. #1. Ahead of football, ahead of basketball, ahead of anything else you want to name. The problem with baseball, other than it being, like George Carlin said, the pre-industrial, pastoral game and everything, it's not as exciting, it's not on a clock like basketball, and football doesn't show the same kind of athletic ability. The other problem with baseball, other than the fact that it's slow-moving, is there's so many games. So you can put it on like wallpaper in the background, but the regular season, there isn't a lot of urgency for each game. Not like in football, 16 games. Every game is enormous. Baseball, you lose a doubleheader, no big deal. So this really answers that issue. You know, 60 games, every game is important, even more than a normal NBA season. In my lifetime, in 1981, there was a players' strike in the middle of the season, but it's not like going in, everyone knew there's not going to be a full season. There was a first half and a second half broken up by a strike. In 1994, there was no World Series. Also, it's not like going in, it was a sure thing, there wouldn't be a full season. In 95, as a result of the strike in 94, there were fewer games played than normal. But never anything like this, folks, where heading into the season, you will know this will be an abbreviated season. It's truncated. It's this many games to play. And like in the NBA, where we were saying, hey, all the stuff you want to try, but it's difficult sometimes to reseed teams, all that funky stuff you want to see if you can make the game better, you can do it now with baseball, at least in this important respect. And for those who would say, well, that's just for this season, it won't go on to really cause any permanent changes in baseball, I wouldn't be so sure. There are probably far too many games in a season. And guys, and Tim, I know you can appreciate this, so much of baseball's appeal is comparing one era to another, records that are by and large easy to compare because it's the same number of games. The game has changed so much, folks, because of PEDs and now launch angles and sabermetrics. It does not resemble the game that I grew up with in the 70s and 80s. Who cares if there won't be as easy a comparison from one era to another? I think this has a chance to revitalize baseball in the national consciousness.
Floor is yours, Tim.
Well, Max, you make a lot of points there. I disagree on this front. 162 games is the best barometer of whether a team's any good. Sparky Anderson used to tell me that's why we play so many games, is there are no excuses at the end. You are where you belong after 162. In a 60-game free-for-all race to the finish, I know it could be really exciting, but the best teams aren't always going to win in that time frame. The Yankees are going to wear you down in 162 games. A subpar team in baseball, and it only happens in baseball, can get really hot for 50 games, even 60 games, but not for 162. So as much as I think, Max, you are in the majority here of people who are excited about a shorter season, I'm 63 years old. I'd rather play 162, but at this point, I'll take anything just to get the game back on the field.
And that latter part, Tim, is exactly where I'm at. It's about taking whatever I can get at this particular moment in time. I'm not nearly as excited as Max is because of the reason that Max articulated. I would prefer at least 120 games, let alone 160. But when you talk about 60 games, I mean, my God, that makes the Mets equal to the Yankees, for crying out loud. I mean, if it's just 60 games, anybody could get hot for a couple of months and be a competitor, if not a championship contender, for crying out loud, simply because of how truncated the season has become, and as a result, just getting a hot hand and all of that other stuff. We got to pay attention to that. I do like the fact that with a shortened season, particularly one that's starting this late, there ain't going to be too many excuses for injury. If you've been taking care of yourself as a professional, even though it's not going to put you in quote-unquote baseball shape, nevertheless, some of the injuries that you may sustain over the course of 162 games one would surmise that you've got a better chance of avoiding that over the course of 60 games. But I just think that ultimately what it really comes down to is us absorbing and really embracing the moment. We haven't really had sports. I mean, the only person that's given us sports first was Dana White with the UFC, and then obviously Bob Arum and Top Rank, they've had some boxing matches on, but outside of that, we really haven't seen much, and we know the big three, football, basketball, and baseball, even though football wouldn't have been going on anyway until September or August, that is, for the preseason. Basketball would have been going on. That's not back yet. Baseball hasn't had an opportunity to really take this nation back to some degree. They could have made a profound impact, but I think they dropped the ball. I think they've still alienated some of their audience, and even though people are going to be watching because we're desperate to watch, we're going to be watching to some degree with a raised eyebrow because of what it took to get to this point, how it's just 60 games, but we'll take whatever the hell we can get because we don't really have much right now. We'll take whatever we can get.
Well, first of all, Tim, I appreciate you need 162 games. In fact, theoretically, in order to find the best team in baseball, you need something like 10,000 games. So the difference between 154, which it was once upon a time, and 162 during expansion in 1961, they could have easily taken 8 games off and gone to 146 or 130 games. It's virtually the same thing as 162 in terms of the probability of figuring out actually which is the best team. It's one of the reasons the postseason, until people started figuring out the formula there, power, arms, and defense and stuff, the postseason is such a crapshoot because it's not enough games to really always determine the best team, not like in the NBA. There's some chance, but that's one of the things that makes it interesting, that there's some chance. And I really think the reason they originally expanded the games was money. More money to be made when it was a popular sport. But the trade-off is there's the inventory being overflowing the way it is. You've diminished the importance of each game. You've made it even more highly localized and less a national sport. Because it's less a national sport, people in New York don't care about what's happening to a team in San Diego, unlike in football or basketball.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.